are we? Why are we not there?
We're live.
We're live. Welcome to the neighborhood.
I don't know if you can see us because it's a jungle in here today.
There's so much greenery.
There's so much greenery.
She's giving me a hard time, but I like to have a plant or something. I was going to put the lamp on the table, but that would be weird.
She was like, we need some greenery. And I'm thinking like maybe some background plants or something. But
we didn't have time. It would be good if we had something right here.
I know.
And you know what I also said this week? I said, we're going to get a couch up here because we're talking to therapists. We should have a couch.
And there's one right there.
Yeah,
it's
but
small.
that one, we
it's
would
small.
not all three fit on that
We
one.
would though. And she gets to be in the big chair, like in her office.
Like
she's
a real
in a chair.
therapist.
And then we're the clients. We're on the couch. She doesn't sit on the couch with the clients. You know? Yeah, that's true.
Wait, have you ever done that?
Yeah. I'm sure. Like when they need something, you know.
Oh yeah.
Like it's okay. Let's process through that.
I don't like.
I have no
cuddle
empathy
up with
growing
them
up.
on
Yeah,
the
I
couch.
know.
Like, chair. Like that's weird.
Well, okay, you don't
My
start
therapist
there.
sat next
You
to
don't
me. I would
start
go,
there.
I think we're too
See, you wouldn't be
close.
someone that they do that to because you're not inviting it. But there are other people who start to get emotional, and I'm sure you're like, you move over to them. Tell me if I'm wrong. Yeah.
Well, this is Gina.
Asking for a friend.
Just asking for a friend. Gina, Taylor, and our very special, one of our BFFs here.
I know. We love
First of
her.
all, we love Stephanie Luther. We have 5 Stephanies that work in this
5?
building.
I'm the best.
Stephanie
the
Luther,
best.
Stephanie Spooth, which we're going to interview next week.
Mhm.
Stephanie Shiver,
Oh,
Stephanie
from
Pico,
oh,
Stephanie
wow.
Orr.
Okay, we do it
Julie
fine.
said there's actually another Stephanie also at Obesity Medicine. There's 2 Stephanies.
there
I
are.
didn't know that there's
Okay,
only
you're
one.
making me feel very not unique.
Let's talk about that.
Let's talk about that.
I've been working through that.
Tell us about the first time when you remember not feeling
Feeling
unique.
unique.
Well, so because we just thought this was interesting, here at the village, we have so many amazing therapists, and each one have a very unique kind of area.
Approach or area, yeah.
And it's the holidays. So what better time to learn about who these fabulous therapists are? So in case you, like Taylor, need to talk to a therapist.
I already have one, okay? It's
Yeah.
recent. So as you can tell, I'm still
she
up
did,
here, but I'm
she
coming
did
down.
want to come
I did.
and meet with you, but she's
I was
like,
like,
would it
it'd
be
be-
weird? I was
yeah.
like, yes.
Yes,
It'd be weird.
It would.
And
I
Stephanie
know.
said, no, it's too much, too close.
Too close.
Taylor would be at my door every day.
But you are what spawned this for us because
Yeah.
of your approach. Like normally therapy in my brain is like, okay, it's you're doing it, you're going to it when you have an issue and something you want to work through, but also it's kind of ongoing, like maintenance. But you were like, I like to, and you can talk more to this, and probably it will be different than what I am saying currently. But yours was more of an approach of like, I want you to come in, I'll give you these tools, and then I want you to go fly.
Go
like a
do
pig.
the work.
Yeah.
Do
Yes.
the work.
Do the work.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, no, hold my hand the entire time, please.
And be
And
my,
you're like,
be my
no.
best friend. Taylor just wants a therapist to be her
No, I
She
want
always
them-
says, I want them to say, you're my favorite
You're my favorite client. And they what people tell me is that I need therapy.
And that's why she's in therapy. Yeah. So her therapist needs a therapist
yeah.
after your
No,
session.
I don't put I only give them I make them have the best sessions. They leave feeling so
Good
refreshed.
about themselves.
Yeah, they feel good about
She
themselves. Like, you're an
thinks
amazing
that.
therapist. Aren't I awesome? Because I make your job easy because you just love being here with me. Yeah.
And
No,
you pay for that.
I do. I pay for that. I pay to be loved.
Yeah.
But they don't tell me they love me.
That's
and
called
so-
that's another profession as well. But Taylor is in therapy.
Geisha?
Yes, geisha. That's exactly what
I
I was
always,
thinking of.
I'm always like a little bit nervous using that term, but I don't really
Geisha?
know what it is.
Geisha girl?
Like, but are they just talking to them? What's a geisha? What's a geisha?
A geisha is a woman who in Japan paints her face white
And
and wears little tiny wooden shoes
okay, hold on, you're getting
And a
weird.
kimono.
Yeah, what does she
and a
do?
kimono, and she serves you tea.
No, I thought it was like someone that you like.
Okay, we'll have to look that up.
I know. I'm really like, I
Stephanie,
don't know if I can
don't
make it through
know.
this session without knowing
What
a
a
geisha
geisha!
is.
Well, you guys
No,
chat.
yeah. Okay. Tell
You look it up.
You don't have your glasses on. Okay.
Okay.
Well, while Stephanie
Yes. First of all,
tells us
Stephanie,
her
I do want to. I
journey.
always want to know, how does one get into? Not how do you get into therapy? Because obviously a lot of schooling. But what made you decide, and at what age did you think, I think I'd be a great therapist?
So I was always into therapy,
Really?
right? Like, I mean, going to therapy. My mom was the one like nobody's smiling, so we need to go to therapy. So
So
I
as a
remember.
child, your mom talked about therapy.
Oh yeah, which
See,
was
I
back
don't
in the
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah,
70s.
I
Yeah.
don't remember people talking about
Even in
therapy.
the 90s, they didn't talk about it
Yeah.
unless you were going through something. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah,
Right.
you
And then
had
it
to
was
go to
like you
trauma
don't talk
therapy.
about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Right.
So as a child,
As a
you
child, I
you
remember
knew
going to
about
family
this.
therapy when I was 5. And then when I was learning about like family therapy and family sculpting, I was like, oh my God, that started in the 70s. And
Wait,
I
family
actually,
sculpting? What's family sculpting?
so family
you're
sculpting,
imagining doing
I
clay
am
together.
like,
no,
oh,
but
this
it
would
is
be
kind of
fun.
like that, right? So family sculpting is like where you take the family, they're in family therapy, and you put them in the room how they represent the family to you.
What?
So
So I would
so like
put,
if okay, so here's an example. So when I was training and I learned about family sculpting, I went home to my kids and I told them about it and I said, "Okay, this is an assignment of mine," which it wasn't. I just wanted to know what my kids
So we're
thought.
lying to our
lying to our
children.
children
Good.
early.
So we're
Good.
starting good.
Love it. That's
We
what
love
they're
her.
And
she's keeping the business going.
Yes.
Yeah.
I tell my kids all the time, I'm like, "Oh, this will come up later." So I said to my son, like, this is my assignment, and I have to get you guys to do this. And he put himself on the ground, face down, and me standing over him with my foot on his
Oh,
back.
he had to tell
He
you
had to
how
tell
to
me.
position.
Right.
So that represented.
Represented.
Did he do
I
that?
don't know.
Like, and he was like, no, this is real, or is he like
he said
being
this feels real.
Oh,
Oh,
So
how did
I
you
was like,
react to
as a
that?
mother, I was like, oh my God,
oh,
what
this
does
would be
that
a great
mean?
family holiday game.
You'd be out of the room.
The next game, forget charades.
Yes.
Let's do family sculpting.
You would be out of the room. You'd have like, you'd be peeking in because it represents where you're like, well, I'm here, but like, just you got it. You'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
I'm over here if you want to join me.
I'm gonna make everybody do this. Wow.
There's going to be a little bit of
Yeah.
trauma.
And
And
then
then it comes up.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you want to do it on your own or if you want like a qualified
Oh,
clinician
do we need
to
a
walk
clinician
you
to walk us through this? Okay. So
Maybe
Stephanie,
I'll
what are
come
you
over
doing
for-
on Christmas afternoon?
We start yelling at each other. Like, what do you mean you're on the ground and my foot is on you?
Yeah. What does this represent?
So I remember doing it when I was 5.
Wow.
And when I was
wow.
learning about family sculpting, I was like, that's when it just came out. So
Wow.
So
so I've
interesting.
always been exposed to therapy all throughout my life.
What
Which
did
is
your
rare.
parents do?
My dad was a dentist in the military.
Okay,
the
so
Army.
not mental health
Wow.
at all.
Mom was a kindergarten teacher, then a
Wow.
4th grade teacher, then secretary, then a real estate agent.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, she was all over
Yeah.
the place.
And so you went into like high school and college knowing what you wanted to do.
well, I don't know if I knew what I wanted to do. I was just intrigued by it. So
Okay.
when I went to college, I wanted to be a psychology major.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, yeah, no, you won't make money in that. They're like, you need
Don't
to go
you
get
love how many children are told that? My brother was told that about web design
No.
in 1990
No.
because I specifically remember
way.
I was starting a business, wanted him to design my website for our very first business, and I can remember my mom, Grandma Davis, telling him that's probably never going to make
gonna-
money,
yeah.
or yeah, why would you want to do that? But it's like, oh, had we all known, yeah.
Wow.
It's like when my dad thought credit cards weren't going to take off.
Oh, those would never take off. That's a fad.
Now they're on my phone and I would die.
That's true. Now he's right. They really didn't.
So so in college I was business degree,
Wow.
finance, and I worked in the corporate world for 15 years.
Whoa.
And it was interesting because like I always fell into education and I fell into like consulting, like always working relationally with
Right.
people. So I did that for 15 years and then I left. I
What
raised
prompted
my
the
kids.
leave? Okay, you left to
Yeah,
raise your kids.
I got
Yeah.
pregnant.
Yeah.
Decided okay, I'm
Nailed
gonna
it.
stay home.
Raised
Yeah.
my kids. We like traveled. We lived in Ireland for 4 years. Like, you know,
Cool.
that kind of stuff. And then when we moved back to here to Denver, when I was 45, I just was like,
I love that.
I think I'm supposed to go back and get my degree. And all
Whoa.
throughout that, I'd always like been interested in psychology,
Yeah.
tried to read psychology books and those sorts of things.
Wow.
So I went back at 45.
Wow, that's even cooler.
get
I
my
don't think I
degree.
knew that.
Yeah.
So
it was a
cool.
late life, not even late life, but midlife
Later
pivot,
life, right?
Yeah,
Like, I mean,
yeah.
you don't think about going to get your master's at 45.
Well, I always think
Starting
this
a
is
whole new career.
encouraging for people like your age in their early 30s when you think, I don't know what I want to be yet.
Yeah.
It's like you may not until you're in your mid 40s or
Yeah.
50s.
One of my friends who's 44 just got into a master's program, masters of, sorry, Courtney, something to do with art, because she is a curator at the museum,
Oh,
but she
cool.
can't be like a master curator or like head of art department or director until she gets her master's. And she was like, I just never thought, like, she's got a 6-year-old, she's 44. She's like, I don't know. And then she's in a 3-year program, like teaching at CU and doing all these things. And it's like, it does seem counterintuitive to the stage of life that she's at. You're like, you have a kid and your husband works a lot, and like, how are you going to do this? But she was like, I'm just going to go for it. And I
Yeah.
so appreciate people when they do that.
And that's what I did. I just went back and took one class.
Wow.
And then I just slowly kept doing it. And my kids were young at
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
And Mike, both one of my middle son had gone through some really hard problems and ended up at Children's Hospital. And we went through some intensive mental health programming there. And that was part of the desire to go back, right?
The
Because
passion
what I
behind
saw
it.
is he had his issues when he was in like 5th grade. And he'd learned all these skills in 5th grade. And now he's 22. He's in the military.
Wow.
He is unflappable.
Yeah.
Like he knows all these skills. But then my other kids who kind of struggled a little later in life, like they were learning skills at an age where they weren't really taking it in.
Yeah.
So I had this passion to go into schools and teach schools like can we proactively teach these kids emotional regulations and stress tolerance? Can we kind of do this so that they're not reacting? So I mean, my original goal was to make it a more proactive industry because it's such a reactive industry. I have an issue. I need to go to
therapy. Yeah.
Right, versus I want to learn these skills. And
Which
I
is
think that's why I'm
interesting.
so skills based in my treatment.
And when you have kids that go through things and you say, wow, if only we could have taught these skills to all of us at an earlier age.
Well, I'm teaching like 50, 60, 70-year-old people the same thing that my 5th grader learned.
Right.
And there, so many of my clients when I was working at the hospitals were like, why don't they teach us in the schools? Like they seem so simple.
Yeah.
And I tell my clients all the time, like what I'm going to teach you is really simple. It's just not easy.
Right.
Yeah, but I feel like it's still because we're coming off of the notion that therapy is taboo. Like it's so like, well, you're only going if you faced a problem versus seeing it as a proactive, reactive difference. Because I do feel like it's just hard though, because like, okay, so Jacob, my brother, your son, went through hard things in high school, really hard things. If he had some emotional regulation before, but if you would have told you before, he should be learning emotional regulation skills, you'd be like, he's fine. He's
fine.
just like
He's
a
like
15-year-old, happy kid.
Yeah.
Like he's fine. He doesn't. He'll be fine.
Because nobody ever thinks, oh, he's going to be at a high school that's going to have a shooting and he's going to have trauma. And it's like, you don't think of those. Well, now you might think of those things, which is frightening.
But it doesn't even have to be that big.
I even
either.
think of Danny, who went through some struggles in his 20s. I think he was in his 20s, early 20s, and then got all kinds of great training and therapy. And now he's probably the most well-balanced.
Second most. His sister.
This is why she's in therapy. She always has to be the most favorite.
He's the second.
He's probably the most. He's probably the most well-balanced male.
There you go.
Child that I have.
Yeah. When we separate the genders, I'll give him first.
Yeah, you'll give him first. And he's probably got the most parenting skills.
I'll give him that because he is a 22-year-old.
He does than anybody. But I feel like because he went to training as in his early 20s when he could apply it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting too. With like what age you go, once you're my age, you're kind of like, yeah, I've been there. This doesn't work. Or I've tried that. Or
well, and that's the thing. Most people say, oh, I tried it.
Yeah. It's like,
what do you say to those people? Asking for a friend.
Asking for a friend. I have done the work.
She Googled one time about one topic and she's fine now.
Hey, that's all
she has no breakdowns. She has
fine.
No relational issues.
She thinks I'm not fine.
I think we're all not fine. And I think we all could be constantly maintaining our emotional regulation.
So Stephanie, asking for a friend. Have you ever had like mother-daughter or parent-child come in together for therapy?
So I don't do couples and I don't do families.
Okay, smart.
Right. So
smart
I'm
woman.
I'm
Yeah.
a licensed professional
Because
counselor,
you'd probably have fights right there on the floor.
but I'm also
You'd be standing over me. I'd be laying down on the
Oh,
floor.
or Stephanie would put her foot on us.
there you go.
See?
That's how I
Yeah.
roll,
That's how
apparently.
you roll.
Apparently.
But I'm a licensed addiction counselor as well. So I joke that I can
Oh.
manage a room of 12 addicts, but you put a couple in a room and I'm just totally dysregulated.
Okay, so you are an addiction.
I'm a licensed professional counselor, an
Okay.
LPC, and I'm also a licensed addiction counselor.
which is
Well,
different.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
different
So what
training.
happens is the LPC is that's the master's level and you do the training and get the license. But then in addition to that, you do additional hours and additional training to specialize in
Wow.
addiction.
in
therapy.
addiction? Is that
Wow.
kind of what is your ideal? If that seems like a weird term for
The ideal client.
therapy. Yeah. Who's your ideal client?
I always say my ideal client is a motivated client.
Oh, interesting.
I really don't
Yeah.
care what they're bringing in the door,
Oh.
but somebody that's at that point where they're ready to make a
I wanna
change
make
because
change.
I'm so skills based.
Yeah.
Like I'm there to encourage you to move forward and to give you the skills in order to be able to push through some of those difficult things.
So
Yeah.
one thing I'm going to ask is pull the microphone a little bit closer.
Oh.
Actually.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hold
Is
on.
that better?
Which is
What if I
interesting
move
because
closer?
last week, or it was 2 weeks ago, last week was a holiday.
Yeah.
Hannah said the same thing. Like, do you take people and say, let's start back at your childhood? Do you talk about?
I watched a little bit
Yeah.
of that and I am not a let's look at our childhood.
Yeah.
I kind of similar to what Hannah was saying.
Yeah.
Like
Let's
I
do
want to
the
start
work.
with where you are right now. What is getting in the way?
Yeah.
So I always ask the question at the end of my intakes. I go, okay, let's say we see each other for 3 months, 6 months, whatever. At the end of it, you look back and you're like, this was successful. What would be different about your life?
Whoa.
Right.
that's
So not
interesting.
just like, what are your goals, but
Yeah.
how would you even know that you reached your goals? Like what would be
Yeah.
different? You'd be
I like that
sleeping better,
question.
or
Yeah.
you'd be
Hmm.
having less fights with your spouse.
Be nicer to
or-
your mother.
Yes.
That's
That
not
would
a
be-
goal. Not a goal.
So we need to first establish a good goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that
So,
is interesting.
I like
Because
that.
I always like want to come back to why are you here? Like, what are we even
Yeah.
doing? What are we trying to
Right.
accomplish here?
What is the
Ooh.
issue that is causing you
My
to feel
therapist
like
doesn't
I need
ask
to
me
do
that. No knock. But I
But-
like thinking about that going into it. Cause yeah, you're right. Sometimes I can take it week by week. I'm like, all right, well today, what's the
Well,
thing?
yeah,
But
this is what's going on. And there's
Yeah.
the thing, like there's a difference between like crisis intervention. So
Mhm.
if you've got a client that every week, like they're so dysregulated that there's a new crisis, like that's really all you have to focus on is
Yeah.
we need to get some stabilization here first before we can do those bigger long-term growths.
Mhm.
Right. So I'm usually starting with all of that. And
Right.
then the idea is there something from your past that's keeping you stuck? So I've started doing
Mhm.
some training in EMDR, which is
Oh, yeah.
eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Is that where you hold something?
Yeah, it's bilateral stimulation.
So, anything that makes you go back and
right.
forth.
So they do the eye thing, you can do the tapping, you can tap your knees, whatever.
Whoa.
So it's doing is it's challenging your brain to go across the
Left and right.
yeah, the left and right brain or whatever.
So I
and that-
did that, holding little vibrating things.
And so it opens up
Do-
yes.
She was
It was
actually a tambourine, a maraca.
Maraca.
She was in a band.
Actually, I think it was just playing pong.
Yes.
I just played pong. I was like, there, therapy done. No, I
But
think it
keep it-
was.
But that was like I what I've found is like when we find that somebody's stuck and they can't move forward because of something from their past,
Mhm.
then that EMDR can really help process that. So what it does, the eye movement is the bilateral stimulation. The first part is the desensitization.
Mm.
So we have like a visceral response to something from our past. Like, so you come in and your mom looks at you with like a very
Like this.
judgmental face, right?
I hate
And
that
you
look.
almost go back to a
Yeah.
childhood memory and you experience maybe the shame or something that comes with that. So the first part is we desensitize that, where you experience that image.
so I
but
have to keep looking
I,
at
and
you.
or
while
no,
you-
I print pictures of it.
Yeah, yeah. She creates her
Yeah.
own mental image in her head,
It's
right?
like you don't
Oh,
have to
I'm
be
sure
there.
she
Please don't
has
be
one.
there.
but the bilateral stimulation allows her to desensitize to that
Interesting.
because there's a pathway that's created. When I see that trigger, I go to this, I'm not good enough. I did something wrong, whatever
Right.
that negative thought is. And then we
I wasn't her
reprocess.
favorite. I wasn't her favorite.
Right. And then we reprocess a new thought.
I am her favorite.
Right. And so that's what that does is so I want to look at the past
Yeah.
only in the sense of how is it keeping you stuck getting where
Ooh,
you
yeah.
want to in the
Wow, you're so smart.
Yeah.
I love this.
I know.
I have done therapy for many years, and both the things you just said are like revelations to me. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. There, I notice triggers in myself when somebody says something, or I get a look,
Yes.
or things like that, and or like a body language or something, and I can feel it. I'm a very self-aware person,
Yeah.
which is why I'm my therapist's favorite. And
Taylor,
I
I
hope
hope
you
you
watch
watch
this.
You're my favorite too.
Yeah.
And that's why I can like see it happening. But yeah, the way you're saying it, you're like, yeah, it's a trigger that's in your brain, just for you need to desensitize that. That's
That is
brilliant.
cool.
Well, and that's the whole idea. Like the difference between trauma and a memory is you re-experience it.
Mm.
So you almost go back to experiencing what you experienced maybe as a child versus the understanding of I'm here and now, and that was a memory.
Mhm.
And
That is
so
interesting.
it's helping
Wow.
you kind of take it from the trauma lens of it
Yeah.
Right.
to more of a memory.
I have an example if you want to do a little
You
mini
give me
therapy.
an example.
Are you
Bring
ready?
Bring it.
Okay.
I'm always on the hot seat.
I don't think
I'm loving the
necessarily.
hot
Okay,
seat.
so
No,
here's
no,
what-
it's not an example.
Okay.
Like one time she blah blah
Right.
blah. It's like there's some. I have an example from me, and you hesitated, so you can tell me not to say this, but I have an example of something that I do feel like is a childhood thing that I've sort of like made an identity at
Yeah.
a young age, and
Yeah.
then I carry that through, and it does tend to be an issue, mostly with her.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
I'm
I'm
dying to
intrigued.
know.
Wow.
Intrigued.
Because
is it?
okay, this, and I've thought a lot about this. So okay.
Obviously.
Okay, so I prepared a script.
Yeah.
I pull out like
She
a
brings out
long-
a book.
I've got a video.
Brings out a page
I actually brought
22.
video. I wheel in a TV. I'm like, let's watch.
That's like
the
this.
old
Yeah.
reel to
Definitely
reel.
reel.
No, okay. Because we brought this up with Jacob,
Oh, yeah.
Columbine.
Yeah.
So when Columbine happened, I was 8 years old.
Okay.
And I had a 3-year-old, 2.5-year-old sister,
Right.
and 2 older brothers, one of which was just going through, one of which had already moved out,
Right.
and then one of which was going through this crazy trauma that like it was so awful for him. He shut down. So all of your attention and dad's attention
Yeah.
had to go to Jacob,
Right.
obviously priority number 1. And then Bailey, who is a fumbling toddler who can't take care of herself in
Right.
any capacity. I am at a very independent age where I can be the helper. So I then at that point, and it was for the next few years
Yeah,
that I
couple
was
years.
like,
Yeah.
Jacob was 15 and not till he was 18, and even still, but then he was out of the house at 18. But it's
Yeah.
like for at least 3 years after that. And again, Bailey's coming into a little bit more independence, but like she's in diapers, she can't feed herself, she's all these things, and then there's Jacob. So I developed a narrative of myself that I am the helper. My only worth in a group setting, in a family, in a relationship, is I'm the helper. And so, but I didn't realize this until a few years ago when I just feel so much guilt. I feel so much guilt if I am not helping her.
Which is
if I'm
why
not-
she's here.
Which is
at the
why I'm here.
Yeah.
Bailey and I both came and
We're
started
trying
this.
to clip her wings, unclip her wings, and say, "Fly, little bird,
But,
fly."
and I feel awful about it. Like
no one
stomach
else feels bad.
aches.
Yeah,
But and my
which
sister
is-
and I both started this, and Bailey was like, "I'm out. I'm making
I'm
more
out of
money." And I
there.
was like,
Yeah.
"How could you abandon her
Yeah.
like that?"
Yeah.
And so my narrative, it comes up a lot if I feel like you're trying to not push me away, but say like, "You don't have to do that." I'm like, "Yes, I do," because
Yeah.
if I don't help you, what is my role here? I'm the helper, and if I'm
Right.
not helping, then you don't need me or like me, and why are you going to keep me around?
and that's
and I
why
do
at
that and-
night I put my foot on her back.
And I lay on the
She
ground.
lays on the ground and says,
Face-
"I'm trapped here."
But it's an interesting
Yeah.
that you bring
No,
that up,
that
because
is-
I need to desensitize that, because I also carry it into every one of my relationships, like romantic relationship, friendships, sister, brother, all these things. Like if I'm not the helper, if I'm not at my sister's house
What
cleaning her
value?
house to be
Yeah.
like, "Look, I'm helping, invite me over more," like, or friends being like, "I'll drive to you so that you don't have to spend time in traffic driving to me, because if you have to do that, you'll probably stop doing that, because what am I worth other than being the helper?"
Yeah.
And it all, in my opinion, stems from that time where I'm at a really young age, but it's like I was the helper. And so
Yeah.
it makes me, I'm afraid to ever leave helping a role, helping you,
Right.
because I'm like, that's my role.
And
That's what
I'm
I do.
It is your role. And it can be hired out to another person.
And then
And you'll
there's the
still be a valuable daughter.
lack of empathy.
Yeah,
around
I
it.
know. And I'm like, no, you'll still be my daughter and I'll love you. and you don't have to work with me every day
Yeah.
and to feel that. Yeah.
This is a lovely
Yeah.
moment.
Wow.
It's very beautiful.
Wait, let me
Because
tap
I
my
know.
knees.
Yes. But here's what's interesting, right? Like you understand it cognitively.
But how do you
But I
let
can't
go
get
of
rid of
But you
it.
can't get rid of it. And
Yeah.
that's where the EMDR comes in, where it's really like
reprogram?
because here's the thing is we hold emotions, thoughts, and sensations in our body, all three of those.
Mm.
And so like we can change our thoughts, but our bodies don't lie.
Yeah.
Right. So
Neither do our
like,
hips,
Neither-
Shakira.
I'm just gonna say, my hips don't lie either. Oh wow. See, you are
Sorry.
my daughter.
Sorry.
no,
But you're
it's
right.
true,
You know what?
it's
You're
true.
not. You don't even have to be the helper. You could just be the witty
See,
daughter.
that's another fault of
that's
mine.
a
I'm like, if
that's-
I'm not funny, then why am I here?
Now that one you can keep.
But yeah, and it's like the body keeps the score book
Yeah,
or
yeah.
new myth of normal. Like those things have started to come out where you're exactly what you're saying, where you're like, the body doesn't lie. You can make up something in your head, you can
change the
change the narrative, but your body will hold on to that
'Cause
trauma.
it doesn't believe
Even if you tell it it's not there, it's like it's there.
it's
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, people say to me all the time, they're like, well, I'm not really anxious. I just feel anxious. I'm like, then you're anxious.
But I'm not an anxious person. I'm just
I'm
I'm
just-
just feeling a little anxious. Yeah.
And you're like, okay, we don't have to title
Yeah.
yourself as that,
So
but
when
you
you
are.
how do you separate what you're thinking from
Well,
I
and
mean, is
that's
that what
like
the
where
EMDR is?
and things like that can
Just
come.
rewiring.
And so when you hear people talk about somatic,
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
that's
yes.
the piece, right? Like is really because we tend to live in our brains.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah.
live in our bodies. Like how often do you check in with yourself and go, how are you doing?
how am I feeling?
Like when I show people
Yeah.
like this feelings section, I'm like, okay, we know when we're at our extremes. I know when I'm really pissed and I know when I'm like really calm or I'm really
right.
depressed.
Yeah.
But that whole middle
all
section,
the-
I call it the fine zone.
Hmm.
Oh,
Oh,
I'm
you doing
fine.
today, Gina? Oh, I'm fine. Okay, well, you could be
I
anywhere
try
on
to
that
never
spectrum.
say that.
Yeah.
Because I do think that's a really sad it's a sad place to be.
Or it's just
It's nothingness. It's like mediocre to me.
yeah.
Well, it's
Maybe
not.
it's not, but to me, I
Yeah.
feel like that's saying I'm just mediocre.
Yeah. Or I'm
But
just not even in touch with my body.
Yeah.
I don't know where I am.
I don't know
like
where I'm at.
most people, when you ask, when they ask you, like, how are you feeling? You
Yeah.
have to stop and you go, I don't know. How am I feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you really have to, because we don't really live in that state.
Yeah.
How are you feeling out there?
I know. How are you feeling?
How you feeling? How you guys feeling?
How you doing?
But I
Yeah.
think it's interesting too, like you use the word narrative, because here's the cognitive piece of it. What happens is we have an experience when we're 8, 7, 5, right? And this is why looking back at childhood is really important, because when we're at that age, our brain is developed to the stage where we don't understand other perspectives. Our developmental stage is the world revolves around us.
Yeah.
So if I'm 5 and something happens in my family, it is about me.
Right.
So I
Mm.
create a narrative in my head that makes sense of those events about me.
you. Yeah.
So then we create all of our
Mm.
core beliefs about ourselves in the world are created before we're 8.
Whoa.
And so what happens is they become these automatic thought patterns in our brain, and we never go back as an adult with an adult brain and examine them and challenge them.
But you can.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow.
Challenge
even
it.
just
always be
underst-
challenging.
Yeah, understanding what they are, right? Like
Yeah.
so you brought up this idea of like I have to be the helper, that's my only worth.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of a core belief of yours.
Mhm.
So now that you've noticed it, you can start to change that.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm not the helper and I still have worth. Like you start to slightly change it, but it
Yeah.
takes a long time to reprogram that into a new core belief.
Whoa.
Right. So that's the cognitive piece of it.
Yeah.
When you work with something like EMDR and you get into that somatic piece, what I think it does is it accelerates that process.
Okay.
Because it's now integrating your emotions, your body, and your cognition. Whereas just working with the thoughts,
Yeah.
like you said, can get to the point where you're like, yeah, I get that. But I
But
just
why
don't
do I
feel
still
it.
feel? Yeah.
I still don't feel
Yeah.
it.
And I'm still like overreacting to things I shouldn't really overreact to.
Yeah.
Right. And
Oh,
part of
yeah.
it, I even think of all the times because I knew that she identified as a helper. And there were, there's personality tests like the DISC assessment.
Mhm.
There's ones for kids, and you give them little animal names.
Yeah.
Which I
and
took so many of
you-
those as
we-
a child.
I know.
So many.
We did
because
use them as
because
guinea
they
pigs.
were trained. They
We
would
did
travel
training on
and
that.
train people, like teams and corporations on this. And I was like, I'll help you
Yeah.
figure
I'll
out
help. Yeah.
if this is going
And
to work.
she was the retriever. And she was a retriever. And so whenever I wanted help in the house,
She knew who to ask.
I knew who to ask. I would say, Taylor, it would really help me.
That's all she had to say. I would
if
do
you
anything.
would clean the kitchen. And she would do, if I said that same thing to Bailey, it would really help me if you clean the kitchen. She'd go,
And
what
Great,
am
you
I
could
gonna
ask
have to
somebody.
do?
why would
Yeah.
I be motivated to do that? So with Bailey, I had to say, I'll time you
Yeah,
and
because
see
she's
how fast
she's
you can clean the
yes,
kitchen. 'cause
she's
she
a
was so competitive.
performer.
Yeah.
She wants to be the best
She wants to
at
be the best at
everything. She
everything.
would be sad if she didn't get 110% on a
Yeah.
test. Like very. So she'd be like, time
But
you.
you were the helper. And anything I needed, it would really help me.
So she
if
manipulated
I
you.
manipulated. I totally manipulated. I called it motivation. Now we look at that as manipulation, but I anchored that thing in.
And she's like, I have 4
Well, yeah, you
children.
were
Someone's got to be the helper.
Yeah,
Well,
you
you were
validated.
validating that
I
belief.
was
about it.
validating
Yeah.
the belief, like,
Yeah.
wow, Taylor is so helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I need to now start not praising you when you're helping. I need to praise you for other things. All the
Yeah,
other things that
yeah.
you do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like to this day, I was talking to my therapist last Tuesday before Thanksgiving or Wednesday. So I'm like, tomorrow I'm going to Thanksgiving and I'm actually nervous that because I get nervous that there's so many people and they all clean the kitchen. Not this family.
Not in our family.
Not
I was
this
gonna
family.
say,
Nobody
that was
cleans.
definitely not at our
And they all
house.
clean the kitchen after, and everyone's always doing stuff, and I'm always like, I can't fit in there, and I get
Oh, I
nervous that
can't
they're
be the
gonna
helper.
talk about me behind my back, being like,
'Cause you
she's
weren't
so
helping.
lazy. She didn't. Did you notice she didn't even help? She sat at the table. I'm like,
Oh, see now, as
Oh.
a therapist, there's a part of me that wants to give you an assignment
yeah,
where you
Yes.
go to somebody's house
yeah.
and you sit.
He
Yeah,
did.
And you don't.
He said, "Ooh, how about you do sit at the table and you
Yeah.
enjoy people serving you?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, my nightmare!" But I did. I mean, I
And
did.
how was it?
How was it?
Awful. It was awful. I hated it. I'm like,
Did
"You're probably talking
anybody
about
stare
me."
at you and say, why are you not helping?
No, they never do, but they're all it's like this group of people so nice that I'm like, they're probably talking about me behind my back. Like
Because they're nice.
well, they're
Because-
all so outwardly nice. Like it's like the group of people you're like, I don't think I could find a flaw in this group. So then you're like, well, there's gotta be something. And but I don't know. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
But I do get nervous and I feel bad because I also don't like to cook and I'm not skilled at it yet. I can't say I'm not good
You're
at
getting
it.
better.
I'm getting
Yeah,
better.
yeah.
But I don't even like we have supper club every other week. I don't even bring food. I don't like I sometimes clean, but they're like, no, please. And then I'm like, oh my God. And then I get invited back and I'm like, oh, well, something's happening.
Something's happening.
So, okay.
They like that I'm witty.
starting to learn it, but it's so interesting because it is very deeply rooted for me.
Yeah.
And it's very triggering. Like I see a group cleaning or I see people talking in the corner. I'm like, there it is. They're talking about how I didn't help them clean. I knew it. Like I'm so
Think
triggered.
about that. That's a very like kid mentality.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of like the world revolves around me.
Yeah.
Right.
Sort of thing.
Well, and like what you said, I saw trauma happening to my family and my brother.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I didn't think there's something going on with my brother. I was like, what
There's
is this?
something going
Like,
on.
I made that about me. Like, I mean, maybe this is a little bit twisted, but like from what you were trying to say, but I did make it about me. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling a little neglected because
Yeah.
there's a toddler
Yeah.
and a teenager who needs attention. So I'm feeling neglected.
Right.
And so what can I do to again be the center of attention? That's like, oh my gosh, you did that for her. You're such a good helper. And I'm like, yes.
Well, I mean, we're all looking to get our needs met.
Yeah.
Right. So we figure out
Yeah.
how we get our
How
needs
we do
met.
that, whether it's bad behavior, whether it's good behavior.
Yeah.
You never had bad behavior.
No, because I was so afraid to be a burden. I wanted to be the helpful child in all the senses. I like so helpful that I never did any substance use in high school whatsoever.
Not until college.
Not
when
until
she
college.
called me on her 21st birthday
Yeah.
and had a couple beers, and she actually was telling me, I drank
Because I
beer
felt so bad.
because she felt so bad. And I was like,
I don't remember this, by the
"Good
way. I
for you."
really
Yeah,
don't.
you
She literally
Well,
told me a
that's what
decade
happens when
later.
you drink
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of beer.
Yeah, that's what happens. You don't remember.
But in
I
high
remember
school-
hanging up and
yeah.
laughing. I was like, well, are you safe? Where are you?
I had probably thrown up and
Yeah.
I was sitting on a curb crying or something.
So,
So,
yeah.
that was my
And
MO.
I was like, you're still a good girl. Now go help somebody.
Oh, but it's so interesting. So, but I liked your your approach because it does feel like, I mean, I've been dealing with this forever. Like, I mean, I'm 34, so for 26 years, I've been dealing with this narrative that has honestly obstructed my behavior in my relationships. It's not easy to be in relationships because of this false narrative. So but it still is something after 6 years of therapy, I'm like still dealing with it. Again, not a knock on the therapist.
That's your new therapist. You just have a new therapist.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
But I also
he's watching. He
He's
said,
not.
"No,
No,
I'm
he's
just
not.
kidding. I'm just kidding."
You said you're no longer my favorite.
I know what you said. But I like your approach because I'm like, okay, I like the idea of going in, but it does take a motivated client of saying, okay, I'm here for this and I want to work this out.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's the
Yeah.
piece I'm missing. I didn't think about therapy. I'm like, okay, what's a measurable goal that I'm like, yeah, in 6 months, I want to look back and say, oh my gosh, this is what has changed.
Yeah, I'm
or
able
this
to
is what
go
I
to a
want
party
change.
and not help
And not
and be
help.
okay.
Yeah.
Sounds insane.
Yeah.
Wow, you guys are crazy. Whoa, whoa.
Wow.
But yeah, and then to say, okay, now you're gonna give me tools or assignments or things that for the next few months that will be like this, like not an aggressive in a bad way, but like we're gonna give you tools and you're gonna work through this. You're gonna do
Now,
it.
does a person have to then come up with not come up with, but like you need a new identity? Like your identity was the helper.
Well,
Does one have to think, okay, if I'm not the helper, who am I in this friend circle or who am I in this family scenario? Like, do you almost have
Good
to
question.
live
Well,
into that?
I mean, I think therapy is always about identity development,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? Like, because something about our identity is keeping us stuck.
Mhm.
Right. So I always think there's like self-discovery and learning about yourself and building self-esteem. I mean, a lot of the work that I do is around self-esteem and confidence.
Yeah.
And I'm very strengths-based, right?
Do
So
you
I'm
see
gonna
mostly women?
No.
No.
I see a lot of men.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And I don't know
was like,
whether that's because like I grew up with older brothers. I worked in the corporate world.
you're very no
like,
nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm very directive.
So
So
I like you.
think
Yeah.
a lot of guys feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And also in the addiction world, there is a lot
Yeah.
more men than women that get treatment.
Mhm.
So I did a lot of work with men in the addiction
Yeah.
realm as well.
That's interesting.
But you were
Yeah, when
saying
you-
that
well,
because of
because
women dealing with
confidence.
self-confidence.
Yeah, self-confidence. Going, I wonder if that's mostly women, but
It's interesting though, because I
too.
think men have
Yeah.
like low self-esteem, but it just manifests in different ways.
Yeah,
Like,
I
it
think it's
comes
a false gender stereotype
It
for
is.
sure. But
Yeah.
women just, I also think
women talk about it more.
economy relies on women having low self-confidence because then they buy more makeup and
True.
get all the Botox and clothes. They need new things. Like men aren't buying that stuff. So it's like, you can have low confidence. We don't care. You have low
Women-
confidence. We're going to talk
We're
about it.
gonna
'Cause you
talk
need to
about
buy
it.
these
Yeah.
things and then you won't
Yeah.
have low confidence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
That is
And I,
interesting.
you know, I think because I'm so solution focused, a lot
Yeah.
of men
yeah.
like
I like
that
that.
approach, okay, where I come in and I'm like, okay, this is what you're gonna do, and this is what you need
They're
to
like,
work
my wife
on,
gets
and-
mad at me when I do that to her. Why can you do that to me? You know, when you come to
Yeah, quit
you
giving me
come
a
to dad with a
solution.
problem,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, isn't this sad? He's like, well, here's what you got to do.
Here's
I'm
what
like,
you gotta do.
no,
No,
no.
let me be
I just want
sad.
you to let me cry for a
Yeah.
second. And he's like, this is uncomfortable in the best way.
There's a great video out there called "It's Not About the Nail,"
Oh,
Have
Oh
you ever
wait,
seen
I
that
have
one?
seen that.
where
Yes.
the woman's got the nail
Nail
in the
stick-
head,
Yeah, and then
and the guy's trying to fix it. She's like, "I
It's-
have this headache, and I don't know what's going on," and he's like, "You do have a
do
nail."
have a
And
nail.
she's like, "It's not about the nail.
Yeah.
I just want you to listen."
yeah, it's
Ooh,
great.
that's
It's
brilliant.
a really, it's like a quick like 3-minute
Yeah,
video, and I
brilliant.
use it a lot with clients when I talk about like gender roles and I
Yeah.
talk about communication and like missing what the other person's trying
Right.
to get.
Yeah.
I mean, my poor
'Cause-
husband he was in a home with most of the time, because the boys, once they were out, it was just him and
Yeah.
3 women.
Yeah.
And he would always be, I can remember the time you were crying and crying and crying in your room so hard. And I was just rubbing your back. And dad came in, he's like, why are you upset? Why? What happened?
Yeah.
Give me this. And I told him, I said, you are searching for logic where there is none.
Yeah.
Do not search for logic.
And
There's
I
none.
ironically find myself doing that with Ophelia.
Saying,
She'll be like screaming, crying, or upset about something, or randomly where you have no idea what just happened.
Yeah.
And I am like, what is it? Like,
Yeah.
what can I do?
Why are
What
you
is
crying?
it? And
What-
instead
yeah.
I just need to be like, but
Just-
it's literally this
You have to
reaction where
help.
I'm like, oh, I'm gonna explode if you don't stop crying because
Yeah.
I want to fix this.
And what's interesting
help
is
her.
thinking about what is that bringing up in you,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
right? Like it's people try and fix it when they're uncomfortable with that emotion.
I'm so uncomfortable, but I didn't think I would be.
Yeah.
Because like when
Yeah.
an adult does it, there's something where I'm like, oh, okay, I'll sit with you.
Yeah.
But when so I never thought I was like dad in that way. I was like, okay, dad, just let us cry. And now my daughter does that. And I'm always like, what is it? Like, what is so upsetting so that I can make sure this doesn't happen again? But she's in the middle of it. And first of all, like, there's probably no logic. But second, that's not the time to do that.
No.
And
'Cause
but
they can't.
there is
They
something
can't
that
find
I'm
that.
so uncomfortable with my daughter, like my kid that I'm in charge of. I'm like, oh, I can nip this in the bud. I said snip it in the butt earlier.
Yeah. No,
I was like, wait, that doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
But I can fix this now, and then we can avoid conflict forever in this area because we can fix it. But that's not how that goes.
No.
And I think that's a really important point because I think a lot of people come to therapy because they want their anxiety to go away. Or they want their
Gone.
depression to go away. Or
Yeah.
they don't ever want conflict.
Mhm.
And I kind of talk about that and I go, well, first of all, anxiety is good. It
Yeah.
keeps you safe and it motivates you, right?
Right.
Inside Out too.
Yeah. And like
Inside Out too. Another plug for
depression,
that movie.
probably not good, but sadness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's appropriate. Like all your emotions are appropriate. Conflict is important for growth, right? So all of these things we don't want to avoid. We want to learn how to be more comfortable with them. We
Yeah.
want to learn how to regulate
There's your saying
ourselves.
for the next month. Conflict.
Be more
It's
comfortable.
so-
I love conflict.
Conflict's
growth.
important.
I
for
love
growth.
conflict.
Yeah.
It's the when someone is sad and I can't be the helper. We're back to that.
Back to the helper.
We're back to that. Because it's not that when Ophelia and I have conflict. Because I
No,
feel
I'm
like
thinking of other people.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Well, and
Conflict equals growth.
yeah, and I love conflict. I do. I on the Enneagram, I will rush over to that 8 real quick and be like, let's do this. And I feel like I can do it well. It's when they won't do it back with me that I'm like, why are you doing this conflict with me? And then I'm like, well, that's not healthy. But Ophelia
to
upsets
help
me
you.
because I want to be the helper and she won't let me
Yeah.
because she's,
Independent
and-
and stubborn. And
well, and she's
yeah.
6
Or-
and she's
and
crying and
She doesn't know why she's
Yeah.
she
crying.
doesn't know why. And I'm like, tell me why so I can help you. But yeah, I do. I mean, I have learned a lot about myself. I love conflict. I think being direct, I'm learning to be more direct. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's hard to I can do conflict, but then when they do it back in a way that it is unhealthy, in my opinion, then I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how to handle this now because
Yeah.
that wasn't supposed to be how you responded. And then therein lies the
Yeah.
cyclical issue. But
So what would it be like to sit with your daughter and ask her when she's not sad to say, hey, what's helpful for you when you're sad like that?
yeah,
Oh, that's a good question.
Like asking her when she's not in that state, like,
yeah.
and
That's a
if
really
she
good question
doesn't,
for
and
all
if
of
she
us.
doesn't know, just say, just start noticing that. Like, is
Yeah.
it more helpful when I sit and rub your back? Is it helpful when I leave? Or even like sometimes it's this and sometimes that's that. And she has a whole list,
Yeah.
and you can even be like, what's most helpful for you right now?
Yeah.
And she can point to like if she doesn't
Aw.
want to be able to speak, she can be like, leave.
Yeah.
Like,
But
I
see,
need my
it goes
space
back
or
to the
whatever.
charts, like we talked about last
Oh,
week. I'm having a
charts.
chart of all the emotions, and now you can have all the things that I
that
can
we talked
do.
about making with her.
Making a
Mhm.
chart of all the emotions and how are you feeling, and having that one, and then a chart of what are all the things that I can do
Yeah.
that can help you
Well,
when you're
I think
sad,
the main thing is having the conversation when they're not
when they're
in
not
that
in
state.
that. Yeah.
Because when they're in that state, they're
Yeah.
dysregulated. I can give you a whole lesson on the brain and the neuroscience behind
I know.
it.
I'm so fascinated.
But when they're in that state, they're not able to access the part of the brain that even knows what they need.
Right.
So when
Whoa.
they're in a more balanced state, and having that conversation with them, then they're able to access that.
Which makes sense because you with Jacob used to write letters.
So yeah, with Jacob, I always used to find when emotion got involved, it just clouded reason, and you couldn't. There
You'd
was
see
no
body
reason.
language shift and you'd
And I would get
Yeah.
emotional, and emotion clouds everything. And so I would just write to him, and I would leave it on his bed. And the first time I thought he was just going to throw it away, but he wrote pages and pages back. And that his senior year of high school, we wrote back and forth to each other. And it was interesting how helpful that was to be able to have time where you're not pressured in front of someone to express things and work through it. And it really brought us closer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was really helpful. And I even told his wife when they were struggling, try writing, because
Yeah.
sometimes writing can help you express things without, at the moment, you can't think clearly. So don't ask me to think clearly
Yeah.
when I'm in an emotional state.
Right. It hijacks the part of the brain.
Yeah.
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 Right. That allows you to think
To
and be
think
rational
and respond in
and
a way
have
that's
long-
not going to be emotional.
yeah. And look at long-term consequences.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
If I say this,
that's
there's-
why when we get in
yeah.
those fights and we're doing this,
and we keep
like
saying,
we say things that are hurtful.
Mhm.
And then the next day, like I always have couples when I'm meeting with one of them, they're like, yeah, we had this really big fight and it was horrible. And then the next morning we were both able to talk about it. I'm like,
yep.
yeah, it's
'Cause
because your
you had
nervous
time.
system was regulated,
Yeah.
right?
Oh.
You could access the part of your brain
Yeah.
that is logical.
Wow.
Okay. Do you have a full client load right now? Because I have a feeling everybody's going to be trying to
You
look you up.
should be.
You should be. Everybody who needs a therapist needs to contact you.
And if you think you don't need one, you do. Just up for a little bit. Okay.
I had one, and
A
I was her
little bit.
favorite. And then we ended it because we were best friends. And then I was like, wow, I have no more problems except for a daughter who always wants to help.
Yeah.
You know what?
Gosh,
I know.
the nerve of her.
The nerve.
The nerve of her to want to help you all the time.
Ah.
The nerve.
I'm going to work on that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to work on that. We're going to praise you for things other than helping.
Yeah. Or just, yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
I love your sense of fashion.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. And I'm really good at math too.
Yeah. She's really good at math. Like anytime you have a math problem.
Okay. I will say the quick grab
But
it.
that's really helpful
Oh.
for me.
Like, yeah, it is. It is. Dang it. She'll just be like 15%
That's
of
15% of this, and
150.
she just knows. I'm like, yeah.
But she quick rabbit hole, she told me there was something a long time ago that you heard that women, just in general, women don't tend to be, some men too, we're not stereotyping, but women tend to not be good at accepting compliments.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, oh wow, I love your outfit. And it always comes with a caveat.
Women
Like,
always
oh,
like,
well,
I
this
feel
old
fat
thing,
in
or
this.
oh gosh, thanks. I don't like the way I look, or oh, I got it for $5 at Target. Let's talk about something else other than the way I look. And so she was like, you need to say thank you and then add another. And it was
thing.
like, it's like joking, but also like, it's the practice of just saying thank you.
So
But
they say, I love your hat. And you say, thanks. And you should see the enchiladas I make.
But at Thanksgiving, my sister-in-law or maybe my niece, I don't know, she was like, oh, I think I don't know. Someone was like, I love your sweater. And I was like, thanks. And I'm really good at math too. And she was like, okay. Is that something to do with the sweater? And I
But
was like,
all women
"No."
should try that. When somebody
love that.
compliments
I
you,
love
just say thank you. Either stop at that.
And stop.
Just say thank you.
Thank you. It's very
Don't
nice.
tell them where you got it. Don't tell them it was on sale. Don't tell them this old thing. Just say thank you and walk away.
They might ask.
Or
but
you
don't-
just say thank you, and you have to add one more thing. So you better have a couple ready.
Yeah.
'Cause
I'm really
we-
fast at running.
Yeah.
I'm a really fast runner. I'm really good at math. I'm really good at
I'm really quick-witted.
yeah, there you go. I'm really
I'm
quick-witted.
really
I'm really
quick-witted.
helpful.
Yeah, you can't. No,
No,
you are not allowed to say that one. If anybody that's listening hears her say, "I'm helpful,"
I'm actually going to start telling you how unhelpful you
Yeah.
See,
Yes.
that's what I was gonna
You
say
are
that earlier. And
so
I'm like, if I
unhelpful.
give her that, she'll
And then you have to say thank you, and I'm really good at math.
thank you, but I'm still
It's
but
going to be
I'm
my
still
new thing.
here.
And
So
I'm
you
really
must
good at
like
math.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You are so unhelpful. So she's gonna
I have
nervous
therapy
system.
tomorrow at 10. It's fine. It's fine.
So Stephanie, what is the best way for people to get a hold of you if you are accepting new clients?
So I am on Psychology Today. You can look up Stephanie Luther, put in Centennial, it'll narrow it down. I don't even know if there are any other Stephanie.
And make
Luthers
sure you
in
put
there.
Luther after, because remember,
Yes.
there's 6 Stephanies
But there's
in here.
there's only one other Stephanie therapist.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
But
The other
still,
ones would be like, please don't contact me. I don't do that.
I need to send a message to all the Stephanies here and say, when you
Stephanie
order
party.
food
Oh,
from DoorDash,
Yes.
put your last
put
name.
your last name, because it just comes for Stephanie.
We
We're
should
like,
have a Stephanie party.
that would be
Ooh,
really fun.
All the Stephanies.
Or
There's
do
no
a magic
Taylors.
show, magic for Stephanie.
Or Gina's, but we met a Gino.
Gino. I hired him.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Okay. So Stephanie, you go to Psychology Today.
Stephanie
Yes.
Luther.
Stephanie
Centennial.
Luther, Luther. We'll put a link in the show notes about that. You are so delightful. We love you so
No.
much. Your family is amazing. Your husband's so nice. Doug,
Shout out to
you.
Donald.
What about
Donald.
Doug?
Do you know that
Doug.
the priest or the pastor at our wedding said the
Wait, you called him
called
Donald?
Donald Bill?
Bill. Did you have an
He's
ex-boyfriend
like,
named
"Yeah,
Bill?
damn it,
We went to happy hour last night and they called him Douglas. So
Oh, well, see,
Okay.
Doug. I don't know why. In
Should
my
you
head,
change your name?
Donald?
Donald.
To Doug.
Sorry, Doug, Donald.
Donald, I know. The
Um,
flying pig. Ask her.
Ask
Ask-
Stephanie about the flying pig, the lighted
The lighting of the pig.
the
Christmas
lighting
pig.
of
Christmas
the
pig.
Christmas pig.
I got to see a video because
Yeah.
I was out of town.
It was amazing. This is delightful. And next
It
week
is.
we have another Stephanie
Another Stephanie in the
on-
house.
In the house. On
What
the
it,
show.
this was
So good.
Like I hope every other therapist isn't watching. I loved the ones we've done, and I will love the ones we do. But this was the one I was looking forward to most because I really love your approach to everything, and I learned so much, and I want to learn more. So I'm so curious. So
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
And that's my thing. I'm all about empowering you.
Yeah,
That's the educator in me. Like I want to
Yeah.
give you
Yeah,
the
that is
skills so that
interesting.
you can walk away.
so cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And because she says, you know what, you're not helpful to me
I know.
when you stick around too long. So there you go. End on that note.
Yes.
And until then, you all get out in the neighborhood and meet someone new. Meet some of your neighbors. It's the holidays. Invite them over.
Invite them over. We all need more people.
And you
in
know
our
what? And if
lives.
they sit there and they don't help you clean up, just say they're probably in therapy with Stephanie.
And next week you won't be able to see us through the jungle, so we'll
Yes.
trim the hedges. Don't worry.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.